let's bring into the conversation our NHL on TSN analyst. We say hello and good morning to Frankie Corrado. How you doing this morning, Frankie?
I'm good, boys. What's going on?
Well, not a whole heck of a lot. What's going on in your world with summer sort of over but not over?
So I've come to the realization that when we get to around Christmas time, you know how everyone likes to reveal their Spotify, like most played songs?
Yep.
You see that? Like it's kind of nauseating, to be honest. Anyways, I've come to the realization that mine's going to be really weird this year because basically we play music at the house a lot to like keep the kids from losing their minds. And they had a moment in time where they were really into like Sabrina Carpenter. So that was going to be like, Please, Please, Please by Sabrina Carpenter was going to be the top song. Now, for some reason, have you guys been to Italian weddings before?
Yes.
You know the song Ti Amo by Umberto Tozzi? That's like, you got to look this song up when we get off. This is like the only song they want to hear now. So they wake up and they go, Amo, Amo. So we put it on. We probably listen to Ti Amo by Umberto Tozzi like 25 times a day. So my Spotify is going to be Sabrina Carpenter, Taylor Swift for my wife, probably like Metallica for me, and Umberto Tozzi for the kids. It's going to be the weirdest top 5 ever.
Well, you may be the only person in however many hundreds of millions of Spotify people are around the world that will have that top 4 playlist. So think of it that you're like a lone wolf. There you go. Hang on. Well, we can't hear it anyway. It doesn't matter.
He's trying to play it for you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
All right. Let's get to the hockey. That's why we brought you on. Yeah. Okay. Let's start. I wanted to start with because a lot of the talk last week with the Olympic orientation camp. Connor McDavid wasn't asked about the Olympics. He was asked about his contract situation with the Edmonton Oilers and the fact that the summer has kind of come and training camp hasn't started yet, but there's no extension. Are you reading anything into this? I mean, he's kind of said the right things. My intention is to re-sign in Edmonton. What are you reading into it, if anything?
I think the fact that he really emphasizes the word win is important when it comes to this whole thing. And like if you were to look around the league and say, do the Edmonton Oilers have a better chance of winning, or do they have the same chance of winning the Stanley Cup than name a bunch of other teams other than the Florida Panthers, and you're like, yeah, I could see it. So I guess what I'm saying is there's a really good chance Connor McDavid is going to re-sign in Edmonton. I would think he's going to do it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be an 8-year deal, but to think that the Oilers don't have a chance to win a Stanley Cup in the next 4 or 5 years, I think that's kind of foolish thinking. Like they have as good of a chance as all of the top teams in the NHL, especially with Connor McDavid on their roster. Yes, we'll see like how the goaltending position changes this year because they didn't change the goalies, but they changed the goalie coach. Does that do anything to bring out the best in Stuart Skinner and really kind of propel him? But I think when it comes to this whole McDavid Oilers thing, it's always going to come down to, do the Oilers have the Oilers shown that they can win and keep it sustainable, for a longer period of time. And eventually, if it comes to the point where Connor McDavid hasn't won in Edmonton, let's say he signs a 4-year deal, so 5 years down the road, and it's like they haven't won in Edmonton, he can move on at that point and say that well, it's about winning. I haven't done it, and that right there, to win in Edmonton, I think that's what keeps the door open just a crack to say that's the only reason why he would want out. It wouldn't be because tired of the city, fan base, whatever. It's not that. It's literally just about winning.
To me, Frankie, he's 100% re-signing with the Oilers. The only thing up in the air is the term. Is it going to be a shorter term or a longer term? And you just laid out as the reasons why maybe it would be a shorter term partially. Pickard and Skinner are still there. They're entering the last year of their deals. They don't make a lot of money. Do you see an opportunity at some point this season for the Oilers to do what the Avalanche did last year, where they just did a couple of in-season trades and they swapped out both goalies? Because it seems when you talk about the Oilers and the fact that they're a great team and they can't get over the hump yet, they're running to the Panthers twice, we talk about the goaltending. Is there an opportunity, or is that just going to be so hard to figure that out in season?
No, I think there's going to be an opportunity for sure. Like, and you mentioned it, the Colorado Avalanche did it twice over last year. Like, they completely revamped their goaltending position, and like there's goalies that are good that are playing on teams that are not going to be very good in this coming year. We just really don't know. We don't know where the chips are going to fall, at this point, because we haven't played any games. But like there's going to be some teams that probably thought they were a middle of the pack team, and then they're hanging out near the bottom of the standings, and there might be a goaltender available for you to pick up. I think the other thing that they want to see if it works is, how does the new goaltending coach dynamic change what they already have in the crease? Because I'll be honest with you, like, a goalie coach is actually, it's a weird position. Like, it's a very specific position. I think it's a big deal, the goalie coach. I've seen situations where, a goalie has been more comfortable with the AHL goalie coach and is playing really well down there. And then he comes up and he has a couple really good games, right? Because you're still kind of in that same mojo, that same groove that you had with your goalie coach in the minors. And then a couple weeks later, it kind of falls off because all of a sudden the guy that's in the NHL, who you're not used to and you haven't worked with and maybe has a different way, and honestly might not even be as good as the AHL guy, like you work with him and you start to see the play decline a little bit. So I think a goalie coach, like, can make a difference. Now, will it make a difference? That's what the Oilers need to find out. But that'll be first and foremost. And I don't think you can do that over like a month or 2 months. Like, I think this is one of those things where you have to give it, a pretty significant runway. The only thing you're going to run into at that point is, are you giving it a significant runway, realizing, I don't know if it's doing anything. We probably do need a different goalie. And then that brings you to like the trade deadline. And then, as we talk about every year at the trade deadline, trading for the big goalie or acquiring a big goalie doesn't really happen. Like, it hasn't really worked for teams that have done it. So that'll be the conversation at that point. But like, I kind of see it as probably up until the Olympic break, you're thinking, okay, that's the runway for us to see if a new goalie coach works before we dip into the pool and see, who's available on a team that might be underachieving.
So Connor McDavid is not the only star to superstar player who's going to be an unrestricted free agent as of next summer. It's a pretty long list right now. Now, there's still a full year for teams to get these players signed. But of the following five, who do you think has the greatest chance perhaps of moving on? So you just talked about McDavid. So Kyle Connor, Jack Eichel, Artemi Panarin, and Kirill Kaprizov. Do you see all the aside from McDavid? Do you see the other four all re-signing where they are? Do you think all will move? What's your sort of feel on those four? Connor, Eichel, Panarin, and Kaprizov.
Okay, let's start with Connor. I think there would be, based on the market in Winnipeg, there would probably be the most fear. That a player like that who's going to cash in big time, and it's not that Winnipeg can't accommodate it, but would just maybe want to say, I want to see what else is out there. Nikolai Ehlers just did that. There's nothing wrong with Winnipeg and their window to win. It's just you want to try something else. But at the same time, like, Winnipeg has had a pretty good track record for retaining their talent. So I think the money is going to be there for him if he wants to stay. It's just, does he want to attach himself to the Jets for the next however many years? And that'll ultimately be up to him. But I think they'll accommodate him as much as they possibly can to keep him. The Eichel one is interesting because I'm sure, like, he's going to have to get paid a lot of money. He's also a guy that doesn't play 82 games. Like, he's healthy enough, but he's not really a beacon of health at this point. But are they better off with the cap space, or are they better off with one of the best two-way centermen in the NHL, who Bruce Cassidy has really kind of transformed him into that. Like, he was never saw or seen as like this really aware defensively kind of two-way guy. He was always an offensive guy. So there's been a lot of work that's been put in there. And I think with Mitch Marner coming in at 12 and a half, there's room to get Eichel done. I think ultimately Eichel gets done. It'll be a higher number than Marner, just like Matthews was a higher number than Marner. He's one of the best two-way centermen. The Kaprizov thing, I think if you're Minnesota, you basically look at it and say, like, it's kind of a blank check. like Minnesota needs Kaprizov more than Kaprizov needs Minnesota. And that's a team that really has to work to retain a player like that because they just don't have players like that. They haven't had players like that. And he's not a full 82, games per season guy either, but at least, he's one of the most dynamic players in the NHL, and you're a way worse team without him. So I think they'll do everything they can to possibly retain him. And who was the other guy? So we said Connor,
Panarin.
Artemi Panarin.
There's a wild card, right? Because he could turn around and say, I did the New York thing. I could go to Tampa. I could go to Florida. I could go to Dallas. I think if maybe it works in New York, but this year I think is going to be pretty telling. If the Rangers are bad again, which I don't think they will be, but if they're bad again and it's a bit of a circus the way it was off the ice, maybe that's the one that I look at and you're like, I could probably see this guy sliding over somewhere else, and I'm sure there's a lot of teams, sunny places, no tax places that would like him. So I think that's probably the one that might be the most likely, just based on the way things went in New York last year and the fact that I could see a number of different places kind of meeting his eye.
You mentioned Marner, and he spoke last week and talked about, how ugly it would get at times in Toronto, somebody putting out his home address and, being, afraid for him and his family. There was somewhat of a rebuttal. I think Steve Simmons wrote about it, that this seems that might be more of a play by the agent and the player. The truth always lies somewhere in between and what the real reasons are here. What did you make of all that back and forth that happened over the last number of days?
So, with the way society has gone now, if you wanted to read the stupidest thing ever, you'd have to go to a stupid place. Now, really dumb opinions and dumb things kind of come to the mainstream because we're on Twitter and we're on Instagram and we're all these places. So if some dummy wants to post something hypothetical or whatever about Marner and his house and his address, chances are that kind of can be out there. And I think in the situation, Marner just had a baby, he's been carjacked at gunpoint before. It's kind of scary stuff. So, hey, we're not there. We don't know what exactly happened. But if the guy's saying what he's saying, okay, sure. It doesn't, I don't know. People are going on about the Marner thing. That's fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinions, but no one lived it except him and his family. So if that's how they feel, that's how they feel. They've moved on and it's gone now. Toronto's it's a volatile market when it comes to when it comes to performances in the playoffs right now. I think the thing that has kind of hurt Mitch is he's a nice guy. I played with him, but he never comes across as himself or genuine in front of the media. It's just kind of uncomfortable. And so with that and the poor performances in games 5 and 7 and 9 years of it, maybe there were people that crossed the line and he probably just needed a little extra boost to kind of leave. And to people, the argument would be, well, why not do it at the trade deadline? Well, wife's about to give birth at the trade deadline. He's not moving to Carolina at that point. So I think it's been so many layers to this thing now. And it's become so complex. And at the end of the day, the player's gone. The fan base is great and passionate. There's always going to be a couple losers that kind of ruin it for people. And if you want to see the dumbest things, you don't have to go far to find them nowadays, which is unfortunate. So, with this all done now, Marner will have hopefully a quieter kind of change of pace in Vegas, but he will still feel he keep in mind, he will still feel the pressure to win and be successful in with that team. Maybe not necessarily the market as loud, but within that dressing room, they are as cutthroat as it gets, and they expect to win every single year. So he's still going to have to feel a lot of internal pressure playing in Vegas.
Carey Price doesn't have to deal with any crazies in Montreal any longer. He's been, well, I guess not retired, but injured and not playing hockey for quite a few years. So yesterday he's in the final year finally of that $10.5 million contract. He got a $5.5 million bonus check that arrived in his bank account yesterday. Thank you very much. So in terms of actual dollars that he's owed for this last year, it's only $2 million. And there's a lot of speculation that Montreal will look now to move because his cap hit is still $10.5 million to a team that's near the salary cap floor. So we were debating this earlier this morning. So give us your opinion. Does Montreal, if you're talking about attaching something, does Montreal, which is $6 million over the cap, does it need to attach something for a team to take that cap hit? Does Montreal have to add, or is Montreal actually going to get something in a Carey Price contract trade because a team is looking to get to the salary cap floor? Like what side do you think is going to add to this? Montreal or a team acquiring that cap hit?
Well, I kind of think it's going to – I thought earlier in the summer it was going to have to be like another team. Like, I need that money to hit the floor. But I don't know if that's going to be the case anymore. I think Montreal has, like, if you're kind of reading the landscape of the league and the Atlantic Division specifically, and you're like, no team right now is below the floor, right? Like, Anaheim's got to 75.
Yep.
San Jose's gotten to 75.
Yep.
So they don't need it now. But if you're looking at the landscape, you're like, okay, I see you, Montreal. You want a second line center, but you're over the cap and you need some cap space. And, oh, yeah, Ottawa's a pretty good team now. Toronto, Florida, Tampa, they're not going anywhere. Oh, wait a second. New York Rangers missed the playoffs last year. I don't think they're going to miss 2 years in a row. Columbus was sniffing at you. They're a pretty good team. They probably don't want to miss again. What about Detroit? And teams look at that and say, you know what? You can attach something for us because you really need that cap space more than I need to get to, $86 million, because I'll live at 75 and I can sign some guys. Jack Roslovic is still available. Like, there's things that can be done if you really need to spend money just to spend money. So I think ultimately, and Montreal's probably fine with that. Like, they have a ton of picks that they can utilize. But yeah, that's probably, I think, based on Montreal's needing to have flexibility and how competitive their division is, they're probably the ones that need to attach something.
And also, I brought this up earlier, Frankie. I'm looking at teams like San Jose and Anaheim because they're at the bottom here. And, Chicago could be in that scenario as well. We're talking about teams that have a lot of high-end entry-level contracted players that have bonuses. And so if you're going to take on that kind of a salary, then you run the risk of some of your guys really hitting all their bonuses, and then you got to kick that into next year because you've taken on Carey Price's contract. So I'm with you. I don't think the Habs are they're going to have to maybe provide the sweetener that way to move on from them. Where in the past we've seen when the cap was flat, it went the other way with these kind of contracts.
Yeah, and listen, we know who the candidates are, right? Like the teams that are closer to the floor, and if they if they need to get a little higher, that's fine. They can make the move, but. There's like Lane Hudson last year hit a ton of bonuses. Juraj Slafkovsky the year before, he hit bonuses, and all that stuff carried over, right? Like, there's going to be a pretty significant overage that the Canadiens didn't have last year based on Hudson, everything that he did. So, listen, we're probably heading into a world where we're going to see less of these types of moves. But there's still, with Carey Price's deal out there, and I think Montreal, like, it's just way too competitive around them for them to not try and move that money and see if they can acquire something that helps their team, maybe not today, but just to have the flexibility at some point in the season.
Speaking of cap flexibility, Florida will have some to start the year because Matthew Tkachuk is going to be on the long-term injured list because he's had a surgery now, which when they talked last week, sounds like he's going to be out until January, but on track to be back in time for the Olympics. Now, who knows how much time he'll have? Maybe it's a month, maybe it's 2 weeks, whatever. Any doubt in your mind whatsoever that when they drop the puck at the Olympics, A, that he'll be there, and B, that he will be, from a physical point of view, at the top of his game?
I think no real doubt for me. I think what happened here is they would have known what the injury was, and they were probably thinking, okay, let's see if we can rehab it without surgery. And then you have like a drop dead point, basically, where you're like, okay, if we don't feel this way by this day, we have to do the surgery because we're working backwards. Like, we're looking at the Olympics, start of February, and saying we need to work back like 5 months to make sure that there's enough time to recover from this thing. So at this point, we're like, we have to get the surgery done no matter what. So with them working backwards and understanding like how long it's going to take, I think he'll be fine. And as far as like his game, I don't know. I think he's just one of those guys where he's such a gamer, and there's such a aggression and tenacity to his game that I could just see him going up to the Olympics after not playing and being like, I'm here and I'm actually pretty rested and I'm reinvigorated and I'm ready to play Matthew Tkachuk style hockey. And ultimately that'll be the springboard that the Florida Panthers need for him to get to his game, as they get closer to the playoffs. But no, I don't really have any worries because they would have been working backwards and understanding the timeline.